Ahsoka's first two episodes debuted last week, and the best way to sum them up is as a couple of member berries held out in front of Star Wars devotees. However, not all Star Wars fans, only those who have faithfully watched Rebels and, like everyone who despises animation, have wished to see the show's characters in a live-action production. Anyway, those two episodes made it clear that the focus of this miniseries will be Grand Admiral Thrawn's comeback. And since he was the villain in Rebels, he is expected to wreak havoc once again in this show. Ahsoka, Hera, Sabine, and Huyang intend to stop the villains, Baylan Skoll, Shin, Marrok, and Morgan Elsbeth, from bringing Thrawn out of his exile. Episode 2 concluded with the reveal that Elsbeth and her team have made a gigantic hyperspace ring called the Eye of Sion, and Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang are tracking it down. Hera's proposal gets rejected by the Senate. With Huyang and Ahsoka at her side, Sabine begins Ahsoka's third episode with a Jedi training session. Ahsoka mentions a tactic known as Zatoichi. However, the fact that characters use Zatoichi rather than Zatoichi speaks much about this miniseries. The Zatoichi training regimen is basically a modified version of the blind Jedi training that Luke Skywalker and every other Jedi in existence have had to go through, where they had to put on a visor that blocked their vision in order to use the Force to learn about the enemy's presence. The surprising thing about its portrayal in this show is that it's boring. Don't get me wrong, Steph Green and his team want you to think that it's exciting and tense, but the choice of shots and the editing keep you from feeling those emotions. Thankfully, we are spared from enduring any more of that as the narrative cuts to Hera's meeting with the New Republic Senate, which features Mon Mothma. The conversation boils down to this. Hera wants the Senate to prepare for the arrival of Thrawn. The Senate thinks that it's just Hera's way of searching for Ezra Bridger. Hera gets angry, and the Senate refuses to listen to Hera's request because they're so confident they've destroyed everything synonymous with the Empire. Amazing writing by the great Dave Filoni. I can totally see why his fans love him. By the way, do you remember how amazingly Mon Mothma was written in Andor? As in, you could totally see how layered she was as a person, and how she was doing a balancing act between being a mother, aiding the rebellion, and working under the Empire's nose. Aren't you glad to see her serve as nothing more than a cameo again? Additionally, Hera has a son called Jacen Syndulla, whose father was Kanan Jarrus. Riveting piece of trivia. Ahsoka and Sabine talk about learning how to become Jedi by moving a cup. The interesting thing about the great Dave Filoni's writing is that he doesn't understand emotion. Two people are sitting together. They have a history. They apparently have spent a long time apart. And they are trying to reconnect through this Jedi training session. And yet every line of dialogue that they are made to utter sounds like a Jedi fac. It seems like Filoni is playing mind games with the plot-loving audience, who will tag him on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, and accuse him of not making Ahsoka or Sabine ask a hyper-specific Star Wars question. That's why he's afraid to let his characters' conversations be governed by the laws of feelings, and you can see the negative effects of this kind of writing on the performances of the actors, who sound robotic as hell. Who really cares about any of that? The Senate doesn't want to back the hero's mission to stop Thrawn because they believe he is dead. The plot deviates from the conversation when the ship enters the Denab system, and they learn that Elsbeth is building a massive hyperspace ring before Sabine, Ahsoka, and Hera get a chance to elaborate on this. Shin, Marrok, and a few other Imperial fighters attack the ship, as Huyang starts to examine the object, making it impossible for him to do so quietly. One of the most dull space dogfights results from this. You know, this used to be a big franchise highlight. Even though George Lucas and his team were constrained by the technology available at the time, they created these incredible chase sequences that were packed with hilarious dialogue, excellent sound design, and eye-popping visual effects. Regardless of your thoughts on the sequel trilogy, you've got to admit that it nailed that aspect of Star Wars too. I still remember the Falcon's first flight, the chase through Crate, and the hyperspace jumping chase. What the hell is going on here in Ahsoka? The dialogue, the cuts, the sound design, it's also inert. Is it bad by design because that is what Rebels fans are used to? Will they combust if they sense even a hint of personality, style, or flair? What did Sabine and Ahsoka discover? During the space dogfight, Ahsoka is required to exit her ship, which is temporarily malfunctioning and is being repaired by Sabine, and engage the Imperial ships with her lightsabers in zero gravity, while donning a stylish spacesuit. It's meant to be the culmination of this episode. To just avoid making it the most brilliant thing you've ever seen, though, is what Steph Green and his crew advocate. They exercise great restraint and won't let this spectacle become cool even for a split second. The Ahsoka team deserves to win the prize if there is one. Anyway, Sabine gets the ship running, and they dive into Cetos and are welcomed by a bunch of Purgils. Sabine uses them as a cover and manages to get Shin and Marrok off her back. By the way, in case you don't know that Ahsoka and Sabine have encountered the Purgils in Star Wars Rebels, the great Dave Filoni has a line of dialogue to ensure that you know that Ahsoka and Sabine have encountered the Purgils in Star Wars Rebels. See, this is what I'm talking about. Ahsoka is for fans of Rebels, but Filoni treats them like kids. Isn't it obvious that this show's target audience already knows the aforementioned piece of information? So, why is it being underscored in the most uninteresting way possible? Isn't the reaction of the actors enough? It's baffling that the show refuses to let these characters interact in a meaningful way, but they also refuse to let the audience point and scream at the screen after spotting a reference or an Easter egg.